like I said, looking back at it now, it's like, drugs and alcohol are they're a symptom of ourselves, right? It's oh, I don't like the way I feel, so I'm going to take this substance to cover it up, and when I talk to people about it, I'm like, when you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend or a situation, right? Somebody passes away, what's the first thing you say you're going to do? Oh, I'm going to go to the bar and get effed up, or I'm going to go, I need a drink.
I'm knocking doors down with Mike Gibson, NFL guard. That's right. 6 years in the NFL, drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. Mike was in and out of treatment 6 times for heroin and meth addiction. The last time, the former NFL vet was completely broke after having a spiritual awakening and finding a higher power, as well as going through a 12-step program. Mike has been clean for over 5 years now. We talk about that, much more, and of course, random questions, and Mike leaves us with the final thought. And hey, while you're checking Knocking Doors Down out, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you get a lot out of this podcast, share with a friend. And don't forget the archive of interviews we have. Bam Margera, Brandon Novak, Kat Von D, Charlie Sheen, Edward Furlong, Kelly Osborne. The list goes on and on of amazing guests that have been on the podcast, sharing how they have found purposeful lives. Speaking of purpose, how about a lifestyle brand with purpose? 5150 LTM. That's right. Not only is it a lifestyle brand that can fit whatever it is you're trying to achieve in life, but they give back to the community. Right now, I am wearing my new 5150 hat, warm leather jacket. As well, I got my new 5150 joggers on that I like to wear around the winter time. And you, the listener of Knocking Doors Down, get 20% off every time you shop at 5150 LTM. All you have to do is use the code KDD20 at checkout and get 20% off. And of course, I said it helps within the community. And how does 5150 give back to the community? Portions of the sales benefit the Carlos Vieira Foundation. Their 3 amazing programs: the Race to End the Stigma, the Race for Autism, and the Race to be Drug-Free. More on the Carlos Vieira Foundation. Go to carlosvierafoundation.org. Mike, what is going on, good sir?
How's it going, Jason?
Good. Hey, we're going to jump right in. Being that your last name is Gibson, we're going to jump in with the G word, gratitude. This is how I'm starting this now. 3 things you're grateful for today.
To have a roof over my head, to have genuine relationships with individuals today that care about who I am and not what I used to be, and just have the opportunity to provide for my family and be there with my family today.
Yeah, those are all good areas. Those genuine connections, man, that is one of the biggest areas. It took me a while with recovery to really be able to decipher.
Yeah, I still struggle with it a little bit today, so I get it.
Is it setting of boundaries? Is it just wondering if what people are saying, kind of, what is it, Edgar Allan Poe, believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear? Or
No, majority of it has to do with, in which we'll probably talk about later, is having those relationships. I in my previous career, I had a lot of people who became friends with me because they had ulterior motives.
Right.
It was because of what I did, not because of who I was. So typically today, when I have relationships or start off relationships with people, friends, acquaintances, whatever it may be, I don't initially tell them that I played in the NFL. And I do that for a reason, right? Because I want them to get to know me and like me for the person that I am, not because of something that I did or something that I can get them that may benefit them. I have a friend recently who, it's actually kind of funny, who I play a lot of sober softball, right? In the sober softball community. And I've known him for close to 3 years. And he sent me a message. He goes, "Dude, I didn't know you played football." I said, all I wrote back was good.
That's the way I like it.
Yeah, that's the way I like it. Right?
That is really, yeah, I mean, I never had it to the extreme of you, but I've worked when radio was a big deal in a small town, so there was a lot of that, and I did not have the filters to decipher it as a people pleaser, wanting to be loved and liked, and yeah, to recognize that any of it was bullshit, because the vast majority of those people are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And that's one thing that I struggled with when I first retired, right? Was I had all these people that were consistently calling me, people that were around me all the time, people that were checking up on me. And in the sad reality is like out of sight, out of mind. I don't talk to any of those people to this day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's that hurtful lesson,
yep.
but we need it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially at as much of a struggle as it was, like it's, it's leading me to where I'm at today.
Right.
And, I couldn't be happier.
That's good to hear. Let's jump back a little bit, because I'm curious about what little Mike was like growing up. How were you? What was childhood? What do you recollect? And yeah.
Yeah. So little Mike, huh? I definitely probably wasn't the greatest kid in the world as a young adolescent, right? And yeah, I was definitely wild. I had an older brother who I hung around with. We had a lot of fun. We'd get in trouble egging houses, TPing houses, stuff like that, right? I can remember from a young age going to the Safeway in Napa, right? I'm from Napa, California, and going to the Safeway with my older brother and his friend or friends. And it's back in the day when they used to carry cigarettes like in the front of the store. They didn't lock them up, right? And so, it's one of two stores in all of Napa, or grocery stores. And so, hey, Mike, go steal that pack of cigarettes. I'm like, okay. So I run in, grab a pack of cigarettes, run out, and we all sit out there and hang out by Phillips School, and we're sitting there smoking cigarettes. And, every now and again, one of the buddies would have like a Mickey Sporty that we, take a pull off of, stick it in the wood. There's a creek behind the school, and we, like kind of bury it behind a tree, come back a week later, take another pull. Stuff like that, so yeah, I was definitely hard-headed.
Yeah. How old were you about when this was?
I can't, if I had to guess, I was probably anywhere from like 8 to 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so younger. My brother's 2 years older. I wanted to hang around him, being around him and his friends, which I'm sure he hated.
Yeah, so I have an older brother, 4 years, man. They used to terrorize my ass until I grew and I was bigger than everybody.
Yeah.
So was there stuff that was going on at home that I mean, 8, 10, that's pretty early to start diving into the substances and stuff,
There was certain things going on at home. And I don't know if it was that era or whatever it was, but like when the street lights came on, my parents didn't really mind what I did as long as I didn't get in too much trouble. And when the street lights came on, I was either headed home or home. Right. And if not, you could hear my stepmom screaming, Michael Thomas, like 4 streets over, and you can hear that yell,
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was definitely stuff going on at home. As my mother left when I was 2 years old, and didn't have much communication with her. So my dad had remarried. My dad was always working hard. So, and my stepmom as well, always working hard. So it was, back in the day, man, we used to walk to school, walk to and from school. And that's kind of I'm walking with my brother, hanging around our friends and, doing what kids do.
Yeah, that was definitely the era with our parents. And, I don't know about you, had to look back and as generations move, I think we get a little more emotionally mature, a little more understanding, communication gets a little bit better. But, when I let go of resentments, I don't know about you with this, like childhood resentments, is while my parents went through a lot of shit, they actually did better for my brother and I than was done for them. And all they really knew was how to work hard, provide. And, I mean, my dad will say it now. He's been in long-term recovery too, is like, hey, I would take back all that hard working for Disney trips and all the GI Joe you had to spend a little more time. But I don't think our generation of parents really knew any different,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems like, the generation, I mean, and it's all about connectivity, right? I mean, now you have cell phones, right? You can talk, you can text your parents, talk to your parents. Back in the day, it was, you're walking to school, you didn't talk to your parents again until they got home from work.
Yeah.
So there wasn't too much communication in between there. Maybe it was the sign of the times. And then, before that, it was, even more different than what it is today.
Absolutely. Did you find that subconsciously there was some harboring of resentment, or that you felt rejected by your birth mom leaving?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
A lot of questions of why did you leave? Why are you not here? There was questions of, the times that I did see her, I'd have to take a train, or my dad would drive me down to Fresno where she lives. And, it was just a different, like when I went to go see her, like I did have a good time. It was just a different, type atmosphere, and, she was always caring, and was always there to pick up the phone. But it was a situation where, I've never asked her that question. I haven't spoken to her in quite a few years.
Hmm.
So it's just, I've never really asked her that question. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I know for me, I guess I've been fortunate to be able to, not so much my mom. My mom is pretty great, but my dad, the addict. So there's a lot of codependency there, and in retrospect, my mom just didn't want my dad to die, but I saw it differently because of what I was experiencing and always feeling like an outsider that didn't fit. Did you go through any of that phase too? Just like knowing you were a little bit different, or just didn't quite fit, or did things to get attention to fit in?
yeah, I mean, completely right. So in Napa, there's two different, like socioeconomics, statuses in Napa, right? You're either very wealthy, or you're not.
Right.
My dad, looking back at that, my dad was always working, right? He used to put up awnings. That's what he did. And just different. Like my house was always different than everybody else's, right? Like I always had hand-me-down clothes. I always had hand-me-down shoes. It was every now and again during basketball season, I'd get a newer pair of shoes, right? Which was pretty sick. And, but other guys are wearing Jordans, right? I'm wearing, regular Nikes, and that's why like today I like getting shoes, right? Like certain shoes I like to get, because when I was in 7th and 8th grade, and before high school and I started working, was all these guys have these sick shoes. So I like to go out and get those shoes, right? Because I didn't have the opportunity when I was younger.
Yeah.
So but I was always like a short, chubby, stocky kid. And it was just I'd go to other friends' house and, I'd eat a half a gallon of ice cream. I remember, my friend Jason and his parents yelled at me, right? Because we got ice cream from the freezer, and I filled my bowl up like halfway. My family didn't, we didn't get yelled at like that for home.
Right.
We didn't get yelled at like that while we were at home. So, but yeah, just different in that aspect. My house was different. It was, yeah, I definitely thought that I was, unique in that town for sure.
Right. Sports then become a good outlet.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, from the time that I saw my older brother put on the pads, he was 8 years old. I was 6, and I was mad every single day for the next 2 years because I couldn't play until I was 8. And then as I got older, like it definitely became an outlet, right? I was always playing, football or basketball. I was always going out and doing things like that to kind of get away from, the atmosphere that I had back at home.
Mm.
And then obviously like through my teenage years, definitely 100%, so like during my whole high school, like I remember smoking weed out of a gas mask one time, my older brother, right? I'm like, I want to smoke weed. And so he's like, here's your gas mask, dude. And it was like, never liked weed when I was using, still can't stand the smell of it today, due to that one experience, right? And then drank once in high school, puked all over the place, and wasn't a fan of it, right? And so during my whole like high school years, I went to one party.
Yeah.
We didn't. My now wife, right? We were both athletes. She went to, University of Georgia as a catcher. I went to Cal, to play football, right? And so, and I was determined to do so. And that's the one driving force that I always had. And maybe it was to get out of the atmosphere that I was in, but I always, but I had this desire to play football, and I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of doing that.
Yeah, that's interesting because for me, people never believe it with where my alcoholism took me, which I would say really it was like a solid 7, 8 years of the escalation, so to speak. But I was the guy that got people home from parties. And I think I went to two or three. I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, none of it. I kind of had a weird determination for me because I saw it at home,
Yeah.
and it's still a baffling thing. Like, how did I succumb to this?
Yeah. I still trip out on that as well. I
Really?
have that question of like, why, like how I understand how I got to that, but like looking back at certain tendencies, I don't know if you've experienced this, but looking back at certain tendencies, right? It's like I got to where I was with football because of my addiction and desire to get there.
Right.
Right. So like I was going to do everything I work out religiously. I was always training. I was always running sprints, especially during like the end of my high school years to junior college and then into college. Right. It's like when guys are out partying, I'm out in the dark on the track running.
Yeah.
That's just something that like I wasn't going to let anything get in the way of that. And so it became like an obsession. Right. And then obviously later on down the road, it became an obsession. I also realized like that I am different in certain aspects by when I started going to parties and started going around people. Once I had that first sip of alcohol, it changed how I felt up here. Right. Like
Yeah.
I have like a social anxiety issue when I'm around a lot of people. Right. I get really quiet. Right. But when we're one on one like this, or we're in a small group of people I know, I'm very outgoing.
Yeah.
And so going to a party, I get a few sodas down the hatch. The next thing you know, I'm picking people up. I'm picking people up. And that's they liked it, so I liked it. Right? It got me out of myself.
Yeah, oh, I can relate totally. Yeah. For me, it really didn't start till about 22 was when I really started any sort of, I didn't illegally drink. Think I maybe had a sip of champagne at a cousin's wedding or something. Like, good God, why do people like this? But
Yeah,
yeah, before the age of 22, it was, I didn't go into like bars or, any of it. But once it was, like you said, that liquid courage came in, then all of a sudden the pretty girl, she didn't seem so intimidating. And I'm like you, I'm good one-on-one. But once you get that pretty girl cracking up, then it's like, oh yeah, look at me. Huh? It's like,
it's true.
oh, it's the shits, man. Yeah. People never believe because I do a lot of like event hosting, MMA, ring announcing and stuff that I am a total introvert. Like
Right,
different hat up there. Yeah. Safe. You guys are all out there, but
right,
yeah, that crowd of people. Ooh, this is awkward.
right. And that's honestly where, like I said, looking back at it now, it's like drugs and alcohol are they're a symptom of ourselves. Right. It's oh, I don't like the way I feel, so I'm going to take this substance to cover it up, and when I talk to people about it, I'm like, when you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend or a situation, right? Somebody passes away, what's the first thing you say you're going to do? Oh, I'm going to go to the bar and get effed up, or I need a drink, right? Because you're using that to change the way that you feel, whether you feel depressed, you have that anxiety or whatever it is, right? The first thing you do is you take a sip of alcohol. And at that point, that's when I explained to him, I said, look, it's just a symptom of what it is that you're going through.
And it's hard to get that through to people because the social mentality, hey, things are good, let's go celebrate with some drinks. Oh man, I'm sorry, let's go have some beers and talk about it.
Yep.
Hey, we're gonna hang out and watch the football game. Cool, let's crack some beers and barbecue. That there's just the mentality is so ingrained.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's when I tell people that alcohol is a drug, yeah, they trip out on that. It's look at how many people die from alcohol related deaths every year. I work in the treatment field. The worst uh, deaths that I see, or the worst cases that I see, are alcohol related.
Yeah.
It's a slow killer.
Did you see a spike throughout the pandemic and post pandemic of people coming into treatment?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. And a lot of that goes back to mental health.
Yeah.
Is people are struggling with their mental health, a lot of relapses. a lot of first timers as well.
Yeah. No, I had a fall off. Luckily, my last fall off, I'll be coming up on 2 years, February 15th. Lasted for that evening, but yeah, it's, I'm fortunate that my doc, my drug of choice, the DOC, is simply alcohol, because if it's something more, I could not be here, especially with fentanyl and how it's in everything now.
Yeah, I mean, it's my substance was, I mean, I'm a trash can, right? So like anything and everything, whatever you got, I want all of it, right? And alcohol was my least favorite. So it was pretty much everything else. And, even the substances that I did use before, fentanyl wasn't a part of that. When you wanted to go get fentanyl, you knew where to get it.
Right.
So, and you knew what you were using for the most part, right? Like, I eventually succumbed to heroin, like a lot of people do. And, you never know what's in it. But at least back when, 5 years ago, when I was 5.5 years ago, when I was using it, you somewhat knew what you were getting.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter the substance. I've read a stat the other day, 14% of the cocaine in the United States is cut with fentanyl.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it more and more. And, the stigma of alcoholism, addiction, and mental health is kind of being brought to the forefront. The stigma is going away. Obviously with celebrities and their sobriety, right? Which is amazing in my opinion.
Well, we need more of those voices. If it's maybe not the average guy like myself that they're going to listen to, hopefully with some of the celebs, I mean, I had a thing recently where a person in another country stumbled upon the Edward Furlong interview, and they were about ready to pop pills. They were just scrolling through YouTube and came across it and ended up watching like 4 interviews or something and dumped their pills. It's like, thank goodness for these people to share their stories to make a difference,
Yeah. I mean, how freaking sick is that though?
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah. Still gives me chills. How did you do through the pandemic? Because for me, it really, pardon the language, fucked me up. The isolation and I'm still like, I'm really angry. Like it is in the freaking Constitution, our right to gather for groups. And yeah, I'm still having a tough time with it, because I've known people that have fallen off and died because of the way that it was treated.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. On the community that we live in thrives on connection, right? And that's human connection, not through a computer screen. For me, I traveled. Like, and I have a hard time like talking about certain things, right? Because I know a lot of people struggled with the COVID, the lockdowns and everything in particular. Me, I ended up thriving, which is kind of a weird, I say that and I have a lot, like I feel bad because of, like you said, you struggled a lot with the whole thing, right? For me, I was able to work from home. I was able to help people get into treatment during that time. Was able to get a promotion, get a new job, and was able to save money, which was a blessing, right? So where I was able to buy a house again, which I never thought I'd be able to do. But I traveled a lot. Arizona would open up. Like I said, I play a lot of softball. I play a lot of sober softball. They would have Arizona was open. Utah was open. I drove to Arizona 16 times. To be around people.
Yeah.
But I would do a lot of H&Is in treatment centers, but it's just different. You're doing it with a mask on, you're doing it. It was a very unique situation. And the one part where I did struggle though was for my own personal meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going to Zoom meetings, right? And I could do those till I'm blue in the face. But when I'm doing that, I'm sitting here doing a Zoom meeting, I'm blacking out my screen with my feet up, hitting my vape. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily listening there. I'm there because I know other people are there and I know they're going to hold me accountable.
Right.
Luckily there's a church that I go to now that was open, that I ended up switching to, that was open. So I didn't have to watch it on Zoom. So I was able to get some of those things done. But yeah, the isolation definitely wasn't fun. The disappointment of like the push pull, right? It's like, when are we going to get this together? Not seeing my whole family, right? I was able to see parts of them, due to people getting sick, and they didn't want to get sick in particular, which I totally respect.
Yeah.
So that aspect wasn't too fun. I got 4 nieces and a nephew that I love to be around. And so for part of the time, I wasn't really able to be around them, which wasn't fun either.
Yeah, no, that, and and we talk about it and people have heard it here on this, but it's true. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connectivity. It is true. And the quicker that the recovering individual can understand that, the better they're going to be. And it was taken away from so many people.
Yeah. And like that, right? I mean,
yeah.
So instant, like you can't go anywhere. You can't talk to anybody. You can't touch anything. You can't do anything. And then they'd bring it back slowly. They'd pull it back, luckily here in San Diego, you could go to a park and they would have, people bring their lawn chairs and then they have somebody speak there. But so there was options there, but for a lot of people in this country, there wasn't.
Yeah, no, yeah. We saw it too much. All right, let's jump back with Mike. So, hey, we're off at college. Is this kind of where things start to escalate for you?
Not even, for me, I'd had, so my first year after my first season there, I had a shoulder surgery and, was given pain medication. Couldn't stand it. My wife's had some medical issues, right? She was on pain medication, never once looked at it like, hey, I want to take one of those.
Yeah.
But alcoholically, like I'd go out and I'd drink with my friends, and usually I didn't drink it because it tasted good, right? I think it changed the way I felt. And as a junior college transfer, I was the new guy, right? Like these guys had been there for 3 years, 2 years, and got to know each other. I got thrown in the mix and had to get to know these people pretty quickly. So what's the best way to do that? Right? You go out and have a few beers, and that kind of, the bonding experiences are the parties that you have, how messed up you can get. You're throwing up and your homeboy's taking care of you. And, what you're doing after the party, you're walking over here to go get food, right? Like that's the stuff that like I remember when I was drinking, right? And so that's the stuff that bonded us. So that's why I ended up drinking quite a bit. I mean, it was a weekend thing for me. It wasn't like an everyday thing.
Yeah.
After the game, have a few beers. That's about it. But yeah, I even had another surgery after my rookie year in the NFL in Philadelphia, and prescription pain medication. Took it, hated it, threw it away. It was not, I didn't like it.
Yeah. I went through that same thing, and I work for a nonprofit. And the boss there, he was the founder. He was an opioid addict. And I was telling him after I'd had a surgery, okay, it was my vasectomy. And so they prescribed me, I want to say it was like Vicodin. It was a painkiller or something. And, here I am like, oh, I'll have this with the beer. I was like, this is the worst experience ever. I took those things and flushed them. And, people kind of still like, how is it? Like I tried a good amount of drugs, mostly pills and weed, but, booze, like none of the other stuff ever stuck. It just like, no, I don't like this. And it's the oddity of the addict of what that altering how we are, our state, and right. Yeah, it was just the weirdest thing. Yeah. Pain pills never, no.
Yeah. It wasn't until, but like I said, still going out, like I said, you're with a new team, right? What's the number one way to get to know people? It's to go out and have a drink, go out and have a beer. So That obviously continued and I liked it, right? I liked going and hanging out with the boys. I liked going, doing the Vegas trips. When I was in Philly, we'd go to Atlantic City. We would do those fun things, right? But once again, I'm drinking it to change the way that I feel. I'm drinking it to not, like I said, not because it tastes good. I still haven't found a drink that tastes good. But yeah, it wasn't until my second year in Seattle, I had a training camp injury, a little like a subluxation of my hip. And so your hip pops out and then it pops back in. So I still have a torn labrum in my hip. And so at that point I was prescribed a very small amount of Vicodin, right? 5 milligrams, 2 to 3 times a day, typical stuff like a normal doctor would do.
Sure.
And I was prescribed it for a long period of time. And so after the season, basically after I'd done it for a few weeks or a few months, I should say, it was like, hey, this is not working very much anymore. I need something to help me out. Right. So it's okay. Well, you can take 10 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day. Something simple like that. Right. And I go home during the off season and I'm like, hey, I don't want to get addicted to this stuff. Right. Meanwhile, I've been doing it for 6 months. Right now that I know, and I have my ignorance before and my lack of education. I go home, take it, I stop taking it, and bam, what I now know is precipitated withdrawals happen. Well, I think I have like the flu, right? I've always been in tune of what I put in my body, what I know is in my body, take care of it. That's kind of what I've always been. I was a short little fat kid growing up, right? Now I just wanted to be a big buff guy, right? Instead of being a big fat guy. So I was very cautious of what I put in my body. And he's like, so he looks at my chart. He's like, I think you're chemically dependent to opiates. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do? I don't have any more. And the doctor in the emergency room right there said, well, here's a prescription for 30. And he's like, go to your primary care doctor and get more, and sure enough, left there, filled up the prescription, took it, felt better. Go to my primary care doctor, get more. He didn't know what was going on. He just saw me going through pain, right? Having this injury, which I've never had surgery on, still affects me to this day. And at that point during the off season, they had a lockdown. So basically a disagreement between the owners and the players in the new collective bargaining agreement. So you weren't able to go back to your team doctors. So I had to go to my primary care doctor, who was consistently prescribing me these every 30 days. I just kept on taking them as prescribed, maybe an extra one every now and again, nothing major. And boom, lockout ends. And the NFL, everything's quick, right? So lockout ends, they call you that night, say your flight's the next morning at 8:00 in the morning. We're getting training camp starts tomorrow. We're getting going. And in the NFL, they only test for street drugs once a year. Mm. And it's between 420, oddly enough, and 820. So, and it has to be at a team facility. So like, when you're getting tested. So I knew I was getting tested, but I had a doctor's prescription, which is totally legit, right? So I go to my team doctor, hand it to him. And he checks it out. He's like, cool, everything's solid. Right on. Next day, drug tested, think everything's fine. And I get a FedEx in the mail. That's how they inform you of everything. They put a FedEx in your locker. And in there, it says you have failed the drug test. And I'm like, for what? And it's for opiates, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I take it to my team and they're like, yeah, we handed in your prescription, so you're good. Well, I wasn't. The prescription I had was 30 days old, right? It was for 30 days and I got tested on day 31. So therefore I failed the drug test. So, yeah, so I got thrown in the drug program for about 2 months while my appeal went through, and I completely stopped. I don't remember having like any withdrawal symptoms.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Like I don't know if it's because I was always practicing and I sweated it out, whatever it is, right? But what I do remember was going on up here. Yeah. And that's where I understand now what is known as the phenomenon of craving.
Yeah.
And it's like constantly thinking about it. I can't get it off my mind. For 2.5 months, I'm getting tested 5 times a month. And boom, pass all the tests. My appeal goes through. And I'd asked one of my friends on the team, I said, letter came through, dude. I'm free. I'm in the clear. And I said, do you have any? And he goes, yeah. And he hands me this blue pill, which was an OxyContin 30. Took it, puked all over the place, loved it. And for me, I was off to the races.
That's the bananas part of it, right? That craving. And what baffles me is that you said an ER doctor said, hey, you might be physically dependent upon this, and then just wrote you a prescription.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a trip. Like I said, I picked clients up from the hospital to take them to treatment centers. And I can remember one in particular, right? So there's, they were giving the client Suboxone, And they were prescribing him Suboxone and they were prescribing them an opiate at the same exact time. So I obviously walk in there. I walk into the doctor's office or sorry, the hospital where he just overdosed from and he's sitting in. And I knew the individual. So I walked in and I said, "Where's it at?" He's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "Where's the Suboxone at?" And he reaches in his pocket, and sure enough, and I go back, boom, there's a Suboxone, right? And so I go back to the nurse, and I said, "Do you guys understand what addiction is?" I'm like, "You can't give somebody these two substances." Well, you can, right? But if you give somebody who's on opiates Suboxone, they're going to go directly into precipitated withdrawals.
Yep.
And she didn't understand that.
Yeah.
So in terms of treating addiction, it's a relatively new thing, or I don't know if it's new, right? I think maybe it's turning a blind eye or a lack of understanding or not wanting to have to deal with it as an ER doctor or a physician, right?
I would like to think it's just a lack of knowledge and understanding of what
Right.
addiction is and how it is. And it's not an insult to doctors. And I've spoken with them through the other work that I do at the nonprofit. And one of them admittedly is like, yeah, his son had died from a fentanyl overdose, and going, yeah, I did not understand addiction until I lost my son. And then I dug in and started talking with more doctors to make them aware,
Yeah.
It just is. There's so many times that medications that like, yeah, sure, you can give it to them if you want them to die.
I mean, we go, "You're a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to know these things, right? Like, I'm just a lowly drug addict and I know that." So I think we put a lot of pressure on them for sure.
I think it's where oftentimes that it shows how much the recovery community is needed for a lot of these changes. You'll hear the government talking about, we want to do this or that, or their perception of what harm reduction is and all. And it's like, can you just come talk with us, please?
Yeah.
Because you guys don't get it. And really, you're more doing it to save face. Like, see what we're doing, when you're not really doing a damn thing. You're not going to help anyone.
I struggled with that in one of my treatment centers. The gentleman who was running it, right, is not in recovery. He's a doctor. And I don't know if you've had this experience at all, but he's telling me, "Well, your taper, you should be done at this point off your Suboxone taper." And I'm like, "Dude, it's been like 3 days.
Yeah.
Like I've been using heroin for the last 6 months. Like I feel like crap. Can you help me? Can you work with me on this?" And he's like, "Well, the book says this." And I'm like, "But this is what I'm saying. Like, I've told you that I don't want to stay on this, but I need help getting through it." Right. I mean, I left the next day, I'm out, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
Yeah. Well, so we got the opioids going, like you said. It still amazes me too, people where they say that, like, yeah, I got that blue pill, I puked and I loved it. That's not the first time I've heard it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a trip, and that's what got, I mean, that was like the beginning of the end for me. Like obviously for me, it was like a distance away, probably, 7-8 years away. But that was the second I took that, it was, my life changed.
So when did we really start to fall off the rails? Did your career end because of injury, the drug usage, or the combination of?
No, just a lot of it was my ego.
Mm.
There was individuals that, and maybe substances could have played a part in it, right? Like at that point, I still hadn't done like an illicit drug, right? It was just, popping, oxys and drinking. That was my get down. Never really did anything else because I'm like, oh, that'll show up on a drug test. I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize my career.
Right.
But, just my ego. It was a situation where, I'd played in over 100 games. I'd started multiple games, played multiple positions, and people who just didn't accomplish as much as I had were making far more amount of money than I was. And I'm like, why is it that I'm not why is it that I'm not making that kind of money? And is it worth it? So talking to my wife, it was a situation of, is it worth it going out there, getting my butt kicked for what could be nothing? Or, I was just tired.
Yeah.
I was tired. And a lot of it, I mean, I was taking 30 of those things on a daily basis, my last 2 years when I was in Arizona, and getting them sent to me from around the country, and it was, I remember two situations where I didn't have anything. Well, I ain't practicing. So I'm like, I'm sick. I got the flu. So they're like, okay, well, and what they did in Arizona was like, okay, cool, man, chill in this room. We're going to pump you full of fluids. And then you got to sit here and you got to watch film all day. It's not like, hey, you're going to go home, because they expect you to, if by the next day you're ready to go, you pick up where you left off.
Right.
So I remember 2 days in particular that I did that in Arizona. I've also had my wife drive and drop them off at the practice facility. Hey, go pick these up over here and then meet me over here. And, it's at that time I did have the finances to be, to get them shipped from wherever I need. Okay. Overnight. I didn't care how much money it took. I was in Hawaii on vacation and had them overnighted to Hawaii,
Wow.
when I'm there with my family.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Did the missus just not know how to handle the situation? Did she not understand that it was a problem?
No, I mean, she's in recovery too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She's actually been using. She has a lot of medical health issues, So, looking back, and she'd probably tell you she's been an addict since she was 18 years old.
Sure.
She didn't go to quite the extent that I did, but yeah, I mean, she's actually got 3 more days than I do in terms of recovery time. Yeah.
Wow. You guys know you're an anomaly, right? A couple that was both in their addiction and to get sober and to be together. I commend you both.
Yeah. I had a good sponsor who helped me set a lot of boundaries, and it wasn't an overnight thing. Let's just say that for sure. I mean, we can talk about that if you want. I mean, it's pretty the whole story. So, we'd been married for 10 years when she finally went to treatment. So, yeah. So when she went to her first, I went to my 6th.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah. So we were going through a divorce, due to our, we struggled a lot in our addiction for sure. It definitely, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. When we were both using, we were both lovey-dovey. When we weren't, we didn't want to be near each other. But like I said, at that point, it was 10 years of marriage by the time we had the treatment. So we'd had, during my whole career, I wasn't, I was using, but I wasn't an issue. And so we had, we got married at 21, had a happy 7-8 years. And then once I retired and stopped working, that's when it really became an issue. Right. But we were successful, so long story short is she goes to treatment. We're going through divorce. She puts the divorce on hold while we both go to treatment, right? Because we don't want to make any irrational decisions while we're under the influence. Literally 1 court date away from being finalized, which was a blessing for me. And she goes to treatment. I go to treatment. I work the steps. I'm with my sponsor. The program I went to was an all men's faith-based program in the middle of nowhere, San Diego. If you want to leave, it's a 10-mile hike in either direction. And the people that work there take you through the steps. Yeah. And like I said, I'd gone to treatment 5 other times, wasn't getting it, couldn't figure it out, had gone steps 1 through 3. And, finally actually decided to commit myself to doing the steps. And I'm like, you know what, if I do this and it doesn't work, then I'm just going to go die somewhere. That was my thought. I showed up with 2 trash bags, couldn't get a bank account, sold my house in Napa, a few years before, had a brand new Jeep Cherokee that I traded in at CarMax because they would give you instant cash for your car. Right. Had literally lost everything. So we showed up to this treatment center, and, my sponsor was definitely the last person that I would have picked. I'd gone to every single person that I wanted to sponsor me, and he was literally the last one. And I'm like, why isn't anybody willing to sponsor me? And they're like, because we already have one picked out for you. And it was Steve A. He was the cook. Couldn't be, other than being, from, him being from Hemet and growing up in a kind of a broken home, and me growing up in a broken home, right, and being kind of lower end income, we are completely different. You know, he'd been to prison, tattoos on his neck, and you know, I'm like, him, that guy can't help me. There's no way. Like, I thought I was terminally unique.
Sure.
And so I'm like,
yeah, we
guy,
hope you.
there's no way that guy can tell me that he's been through some of the stuff that I've been through. And that he saved my life. We talk all the time. I still think, hey man, he saved my life, dude. I'm here because of something that you did for me, and he didn't cut me any slack. And one thing that he told me is, he's like, so what are you going to do? So the program that I went through, I ended up living up there for a year, and that was due in part for him saying, hey man, like, you and your wife, you've been using for a while. You've been going through some struggles. He's like, why would you go back into that environment? He's like, why don't you set this boundary with your wife and say, hey, like, since we're not going through with this divorce yet, you know, it's still on hold. Like, why don't you live separately from each other and start dating again? And do it for a year. And if it doesn't work out after a year, then you both shake hands, give hugs, sign the papers, you go your separate ways. And if it works out, he goes, then you both win. And we did that. She lived in sober living. I lived in a double wide trailer on a dirt farm. And yeah, and there was a spot in there where I said, hey, you know, there's some character defects that I see. I completed my steps and was sponsoring people. And I'm like, there's some things that I'd like you to work on. I set the boundary of, hey, I need you to complete your 12 steps before we move in. So it ended up being a little bit longer than a year that she ended up moving back in, and still married to this day.
That's awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah.
It's funny you said I would get to my third step, because fourth step, for those not in the know, that can be brutal.
Yes. It's a hard look at yourself, right? And sometimes that's hard. I mean, it was hard for me. You know, I thought I was a very humble person, and realizing now that I was arrogant, I was selfish, you know, and thought that I was there in certain aspects for my family, when in reality I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, for the family that had been there for me. And it's not easy to see. But for me, luckily, I was in a closed, safe environment to where, you know, I had somebody at my side 24/7 that I could talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I tell people, if you're struggling and you can do rehab, find a good one. We'll ask around, we'll search, do it. I unfortunately was not in a position to do it, and I think it would have benefited me greatly. Luckily, I've made so many connections with people that I get to pick their brain. But yeah, last night, Mike, I had a situation, a gentleman that did my traffic when I started in radio. It was the afternoon DJ, and I had made a very tasteless joke. It was concerning his race and when there was a lot of terrorism going on, and it really hurt him. And I made an amends last night. I literally sent him a message like, I just recalled this. I don't know if I ever apologized. I am so sorry. That is so messed up of me. And he said, all good, water under the bridge. You know, you're a good dude. Thank you. And I can see how recovery has turned your life around, but you were always good to me. But I did I wanted to be Howard Stern. So I crossed the line with someone that didn't deserve it. And I had to, still to this day, finding things like, oh crap, I got to get a hold of that person. I just remembered this. And it's a good way to live, though.
Yeah. You know? I'll tell you what, I'd rather pick up that 1,000-pound phone than the other one. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, making amends is my interesting thing with amends is certain times that I've made amends with people, they have no idea what I'm even talking about. Even to this day, you're reviewing your end of the day, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm reviewing my day. Do I need to make amends to anybody? And you're like, okay, yeah, I do. You know, I told my boss a few years ago, we played softball together, and he made a comment. I told him to shut the F up. Right. And so I'm thinking the whole time, like, God, dude, I did not want to call him out. Like, almost immediately after the game, I'm like, when I said it, I knew I was going to have to make amends. Right.
Right.
And so like 5 minutes after the game, we had left. And so I picked up the phone and called him. I said, hey, I just wanted to apologize. And he's like, for what? well, when you said something to me and I was in the outfield, I told you to shut the F up. And he's like, you did? And I said, yeah. So I was wrong. What can I do to make it right? And he's like, you just did, man. That's awesome. I'm like, now he knows that I told him to shut the F up, when he didn't even know it before.
He's looking at Mike a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just, it really is for me, and it sounds like for you. And I always encourage the 12 steps for everyone. And I'm not saying it's the only way, because I do know people that have had their own ways of getting clean and sober. And I just know for me, it's given me a really good foundation that makes sense. There's some people, I don't know if you've ran into this. Oh, it sounds cultish. It's like, no, they're really great 12 steps that give you so much fluidity in life to live. It's, and it's hard to get people to understand that sometimes, especially newcomers.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm a believer that everybody should take the steps, not people in recovery. Nah, I'm talking everyday people, because it's just going to make you a better person.
Yep.
That's my opinion. I don't care how you get clean, how you get sober, as long as you get clean and you get sober.
Yeah.
And you stay sober. The easiest part is getting clean, in my opinion. The hardest part is staying clean. Yeah. Right. And so what it is just steps to help you stay clean.
Yeah.
Right. And to be a good person. That's, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. My last guy that I was working with, I said it helps you look at your side of the street, only your side of the street, and keep it clean.
Yep.
Control what you can control. It goes back to the serenity prayer, really.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, man. Hey, you know what, Mike? I am with you. I think there should be high school programs with the 12 steps. Maybe you and I get together, write this curriculum, because I need a vacation. And if you're in San Diego now, I thought you were still in Napa. I'm like, dude, we should have just worked this out. You're like an hour and a half away from my studio. Come on down. But maybe I got to come down there, because I think that it really, especially with the mental health of our teenagers now and so much they're faced with, that it would be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. So many are so lost, I mean, young men not knowing what it means anymore to be a man. Young women, I see it and I feel for them that, they're so focused on the outside as opposed to, a content of character. And that's, it hurts my heart,
Yeah, that's one of the curses of technology, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, don't. I could go for another hour.
I'm right there with you
on all this bull. But Mike, before I get to some fun random questions, leave you with the final thought. People want to get a hold of you, maybe reach out. If they're looking, it sounds like you are working in treatment, correct?
Yes, I work for 2 different programs. I work for a primary mental health facility, the Mental Health Center of San Diego, and then Healthy Life Recovery. And Healthy Life Recovery is a PHP IOP, so an outpatient program, substance abuse program that I work for. So we tackled everything, right? The whole mental health component and the substance abuse component. Great places to work. It's beautiful San Diego. You can reach me on Instagram, Mike.Gibson69, I believe is what it is. And then, my name is Mike Gibson. So if you want to look me up on Facebook.
Good. We'll put it in the show notes here so people have those links. And 69, it wasn't a sexual joke, right?
No, when I was in Arizona with the Cardinals, I was number 69.
All right. I want to make that clear to people, that this wasn't Mike being like,
that was my number with the Cardinals, I promise.
Oh, good deal. Yeah, Mike, thank you for this. I developed a friendship with Randy Grimes, of course, played with the Buccaneers. Not sure if you're familiar with them, but opioids. And it seems to be with friends of mine. I had a friend that played a good decade in the NFL, and he started to really see that mounting up with injuries. And I know there's a platform for a lot of people. There's a lot of professional athletes suffering a lot of pain to keep going,
Yeah. And just the lack of resources that the NFLPA, the NFL Formers Players Association, they just don't have very many. When I was going through treatment and needed help, I mean, my family was calling the NFL Players Association. They were calling my insurance company. They were calling everybody, right? And not one person could help them.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to bring that to, the NFLPA, the Former Players Association, and the actual league,
Yeah.
because it's being more to the forefront. It's brought more to the forefront today and more prevalent today than probably ever.
Yeah. Well, we just got to keep pushing.
Yep.
All right, Mike, here it's time to have some fun. All right.
All right.
All right. So you write your autobiography, which, hey, I would read because that seems to be especially addiction recovery autobiographies. I've got about 90 million of them. They decide to license it as a movie or TV show. Who would you want to play you?
Oh my goodness. Damn, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Hold on, let me think of this. I mean, he's my favorite. Leonardo DiCaprio, that's my favorite actor, but he just doesn't look like an athlete. You know what I mean?
No, but hey, you never know. Maybe Leo could bulk up.
Yeah, right.
Or just hide it in some pads or whatever else. All right, we'll go with that. I was thinking like one of the Hemsworth brothers or something, somebody just good and jacked,
Yeah, no, definitely. What's the one of my favorite football movies is the movie The Program. And there's a guy that plays Latimer. I don't even know his name, but I know him as Latimer, right? So that's who I'd pick.
Right. Yeah, he was the dude that would like paint his face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what happened with that guy. I believe that he had a real downward spiral himself, but yeah, he was great. He had like a run of football movies for a while. Oh man. You could have one superpower. What would it be and why?
I don't know. I'm pretty lame with these questions. Hold on, let me think. I'm already big. I'm already strong, right? So like, you know what would be to teleportation, man.
Yeah.
It's flying's cool, but I hate it, right? If I could snap my fingers and be in Florida, 100%.
Right. TSA is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Right. And being that I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy that starts talking with people on the plane. It's like, yeah, if I could just get there, avoid all that lines, people, crowds, please help
I could
me.
have snapped my fingers and been right there with you today.
Right. That would have been perfect,
Right.
All right, here's a fun one. You are stranded on a deserted island. You have one movie with you and one musical act or artist, their greatest hits. Who are they, or what is it?
Wedding Crashers, and Queen.
Oh, right on. I
Yep.
too am a Queen fan.
Yeah.
Why Wedding Crashers?
Just between Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, it's probably one of the funniest movies of all time.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. What about Queen? Did that just kind of start childhood music that was in the house?
Yep. Had Queen's Greed. I started as a classic rock and stuff like that was something that was always played around the house. And then I remember having Queen's Greatest Hits, right? It was like a 2 CD gold label, right? You busted it apart. You had one CD there, one CD there. And kids don't know what that is. But...
right. What's a CD? I know. Yeah. Geez, Dad, that's old technology. What is this thing? It was on a disc. Yeah, and it used to be on a bigger disc at one time. What?
Yeah. I asked some young people, I said, do you know what burning a CD is? And they're like, you throw it on the fire, you burn it. I played softball with a lot of young people, and so I ask them interesting questions like that.
Yeah. Well, what about like the mixtape that you used to like give a significant other or whatever? That is a lost art.
Yep. Totally.
I got to ask about the softball. You talk about doing sober softball. Tell me a little bit about it, and maybe it's something somebody will be intrigued and want to get involved with.
Yeah, no, definitely. They have sober softball all around the country. Here in San Diego, we have a league. It's 15 teams. Each team has a maximum of 18 people. We play 3 seasons a year. So there's like drug court. I did go through that a lot up in Northern California. So they have like a drug court central, north, south, east, west. So they're in it. There's a couple of treatment centers that play in it, but majority of the time it's people getting together every single Sunday. It's a nonprofit. I was a secretary of it for 2 years. So we run 3 10-game seasons a year, and including there's playoffs as well. It gets intense, man. We're there from 9 in the morning until usually about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sundays. There's a whole sanction, the Clean and Sober National Softball Association, or CSNSA. They have a Facebook page as well. And what they do is they travel all around the country and hold these tournaments, right? The people that run it are in recovery. The people that plan it are in recovery. They have a Worlds event. They just had one in Florida. And they had the Nationals coming up in Arizona, which will be in January. You win rings, you win all sorts of prizes, right? They have meetings every night. It's a really good time to fellowship. Yeah. This weekend here in San Diego, there's a Toys for Tots tournament, which is that Memorial Day are the biggest tournaments of the year. I think there's around 35 teams that are playing in it. So it'll start Friday night, go all the way through Sunday. So
that's cool.
Yeah, and it's just a bunch of people getting together that are in sobriety, where they can let go of where they can put on display some of their character defects.
Yeah. I dig it, man. I dig it.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I always like to leave the guests kind of with the final words. Anyone that's struggling or maybe, on the other side, but doing the work, or a loved one of theirs, that what might you lend?
Just give it a chance. You owe it to yourself. And you deserve it, right? Like, that was one thing that was hard for me to grasp, was like, I deserve to live a good life. You can do things like I did, do it out of spite, do the steps out of spite, saying, I'm going to do this. And if this doesn't work, then I'm just going to go die somewhere. And that was my mentality, was this stuff doesn't work. I promise you it works. I mean, I'm him. Like, I've been that guy. And I've never, I heard this from a newcomer in a meeting recently. And that's the beautiful part about meetings, is you can go to as many meetings as you want, and you learn something new, whether it's somebody who has 50 years of sobriety or somebody who has 24 hours. It has to do with my higher power, right? And what was stated was, find me somebody whose life got worse because they started believing in God. And that stuck with me, and I use it and I say it all the time. What do people like us that are in addiction have to lose? Go out and bet on yourself. You deserve it. And it's worth it, I promise.
This is the Knocking Doors Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knocking Doors Down is all about.